Hey guys, this is Lala Legacy, and welcome back to another episode of Cinderella Phenomenon. So let's jump right back in. I shrug. I can only assume that your curse has something to do with Viorica. I look up when Rod says something, then stare at the curious sight before me. He had taken Sebi off his shoulder and is holding the doll in his hands away from his face. The two seem to be engaged in some silent conversation. Then gently, Sebi speaks words I can hear. This is the right thing to do. You need to let her help you, Rod. Rod bites down on his lower lip before briefly closing his eyes. Eventually, he returns Sebi to his usual spot on his shoulder and turns to me. Fine. You're stubborn and you're not going to quit investigating unless I tell you, right? Or are you? You're right. Viorica is the reason I was cursed. Rod sits down on the settee and lets out a heavy sigh. His eyes are far away as he speaks to me. I was in love with Viorica, but I wasn't brave enough to tell her. I just followed her around like some kind of puppy. One day, Viorica hadn't come home, and it was raining very heavily, so I went out to look for her. I found her walking along the bank of the river. I called out to her to tell her to be careful, but I don't think she even heard me. She slipped and... Rod swallows. He clenches one of his hands into a fist. She fell into the river. I dived in after her. I somehow managed to get both of us onto the riverbank, but it didn't look like Viorica was breathing. I didn't know what to do. I started panicking. I ran off to try and find help, but I couldn't find anyone in the storm. When I returned, she was gone. I rushed to her house and a doctor was already there tending to her along with... Desmond? Rod's gaze is vacant as he nods. When Viorica began to fall in love with Desmond, I felt helpless. Did you not tell her that you were the one who saved her? Why would I? Viorica was happy believing that she and Desmond were fated to be together. I couldn't do that to her. But surely if you told her... Rod interrupts me. I want the people I love to be happy. I don't care if their happiness causes me pain. I'd rather bear that alone instead of bringing down those around me. My chest aches as I watch Rod's face. I would never have guessed that Rod would be so... selfless. But that didn't stop me from thinking that I could still make her love me instead. I decided to become what I thought Viorica wanted most, the Prince Charming of the fairy tales she so adored. And so, I asked a witch to turn me into one. She stole my voice in exchange. Only then did I realize that she had inflicted the fairy tale curse upon me, the mermaid's curse. The next day the king turned up at our house proclaiming that he'd been looking for my mother for years and that he'd never stopped loving her. When the king married my mother, I became a prince. It was just as the witch promised. But it didn't matter. I didn't see it when I made the deal with the witch, but I couldn't be blind to it forever. Desmond and Viorica really do love each other. They make each other happy. Nothing I can do will ever change that. Rod, Prince Rod? Oh! Parfait pauses in her tracks when she sees me. Have I interrupted something? No. Rod moves over to Parfait, but he stops to glance back at me. I won't be long. Parfait looks at Rod and then at me, and her face puzzled, but she does not say a word as Rod and her leave the room. Well then, Rod. I did not get the chance to discuss Rod's curse with him later that night, nor did I get the chance to speak with Parfait and Delora about my suspicion of Sir Alcaster. Days go by, but still, I find myself overwhelmed by preparations for the ball. Things become more frantic every day, making it difficult for me to have any time to speak with anyone. Eventually, I decide to write a letter containing my suspicions of Sir Alcaster. I tell Parfait and Delora that I believe he might be the witch they are looking for. I also add that I believe Fritz might somehow be involved, though my suspicions are not as well founded with him. To make matters worse, he went and disappeared. I have not heard anyone mention his name here for a very long time. I am forcefully pulled from my thoughts when I collide with someone. The linens I had been holding scatter over the floor. Excuse me, I did not. I look up and my voice trails off when I see who I bumped into. Lost in your thoughts? Sir Mithros looks at me, something veiled in his smiling eyes. I suppose those are the linens the Queen asked for? Yes, please excuse me. I begin gathering up the linens, but I reach out for one. Sir Mithros picks it up first. Allow me to help you. I will be fine. But this was partially my fault. Let me assist you. I bite my lip and do not protest as Sir Mithros helps me gather the rest of the linens. I am contemplating my schedule for the rest of the day when I realize that Sir Mithros has been talking. I don't suppose you have any idea on who that maid is? Maid? There is a cold amusement in Sir Mithros's gaze. Surely you have heard the rumor of the young prince having been seen with a royal maid somewhere around town. Rumor has it that Prince Rod has found love among the common folk, much like his royal stepfather has. Rod with a maid? As far as I'm aware, the only maid he has been out in town with has been. I freeze as Sir Mithros straightens, patting down his clothes for dust, before holding out some of the linens to me. If it is true, I wish him the best, though I wish he would be more discreet about it. A royal scandal is the last thing we need right now. I shakily take the linens from Sir Mithros as he inclines his head to me. Have a good day, Melody. I walk to the dining hall in a haze, my mind whirling with the implications of what Sir Mithros just said. I am sure it was those noblewomen who spread this rumor. Melody, thank you for bringing these to me. Just leave them on the table. I curtsy after placing the linens down as commanded. If that is all. Melody. I straighten at the tone of Ophelia's voice. When I look up, I see that her expression is carefully still. I am about to ask you something that you might not want to answer, but I very much hope you will. I will answer if I can. Good. Ophelia sighs as she sits down on one of the dining table chairs and folds her hands on her lap. I've been trying to ignore it since palace gossip is mostly false, but I can't help my curiosity. I wanted to ask you about your relationship with my son. What? I understand you and Rod were out together in town a few days ago. Do you want to tell me what happened? We're going to explain the situation. If Ophelia is asking me about these rumors, then I can only imagine what sort of story these women made up. Prince Rod was just on his way somewhere when he chanced upon me. When he saw that I was in trouble with two noblewomen, he stopped to intervene. That is all. Rod said the same thing. Then why did you ask me, Your Majesty? To see what you thought about the situation. I don't think anyone should get a say in what your relationship with Rod is. My relationship with Rod? I like you, Melody, and I'm certain that you're good for Rod. If I had my way, I would let him court you. I feel heat in my cheeks as I trip over my words. The prince and I are not in a relationship. A member of the royal family cannot end up with a servant. Where there's a love, there's hope. Social status shouldn't stop you from being happy, Melody. Then what about the fact that I am Rod's stepsister? Exactly. Thank you for being the voice of reason here. I bite down on that statement fiercely. I already know what role I am playing here, and I cannot break it. Ophelia looks at me with a complicated expression before she sighs. I will not push you on this any further. But be careful, Melody. Your closeness with my son and daughter has not gone unnoticed. I do not believe in limiting relationships because of one's status, but I understand. I curtsy as I move towards the dining hall's entrance. What did Ophelia mean by that closeness not going unnoticed? Later that day, as I am waiting outside the throne room for Melanie to finish one of her classes, two maids walk toward me and stop in front of me. Melody, is it? What is it? I've already finished all my tasks for the day. Oh, I'm sure you have. Probably rushed through all of them so that you can hang around the prince and princess tonight. The head housekeeper's been giving you a lighter load so you can afford the time to play around, I blink at them confused. I have no idea what you were talking about. Don't play dumb. All the servants know what you've been doing. Just because you're Princess Melanie's personal maid doesn't make you better than the rest of us. I'd be careful not to get too big for your boots, Melody. Are you threatening me? What if we are? Then I'd be very disappointed in you. Oh, whoops, that's Melanie. Princess Melanie. Melanie moves to stand beside me, a disapproving expression on her face. I did not expect such petty cruelty from the two of you. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Your Highness. You really do have a talent for getting yourself into trouble. Rod! Rod pauses briefly, his eyes meeting mine for a second before he looks at the maids. Don't you have better things to do than bully my sister's maid? We apologize. Your Highness will be on our way. The two maids run off, and Melanie turns to look at me. Are you okay? I am about to answer when I notice that Rod is abruptly walking away from us. I frown at his back. He had only just started being nice to me, and now he is back to acting as if I do not exist. What did I do? Melanie puts her hand on my back and gently pushes me forward. You wanted to ask him something, right? I can see it in your eyes. Melanie smiles as she pushes the door to the throne room open. I have a few more questions to ask my teacher. I'll be a while. But she disappears into the throne room before I can finish. I glance down the hallway Rod just disappeared down, and then back at the throne room. My thoughts whirl together in a vague mess until I make my decision. Oh, wait! At the sound of my approaching footsteps, Rod turns and looks at me. He scowls, but he does not say anything. Let's tell him off for his behavior. The words spill out of me before I can even think on them. What have I done now to make you angry with me? Nothing. He turns away and I glare as I follow closely behind him. You expect me to believe that? You can at least look at me when I'm talking to you. I reach out a hand to his elbow and pull him back so he's facing me. Rod! But the words die in my throat when I see the expression on his face. His face is red and he refuses to look me in the eye. My surprise causes me to release him. Rod quickly turns around and begins to walk away. I am left to stare dumbly after him. What is wrong with him? Normally he is not so afraid to speak his mind. I frown as I feel a dull ache throbbing somewhere deep in my chest. What is this? Why do I feel so sad? Or why do I feel sad? Normally Rod's distance does not make me feel like this, and yet now. Am I really so sad that he does not want to speak with me? I shake my head and take a deep breath to still my mind. It is better not to think about it. Chapter 8. The Ball. Oh, we finally got to the ball! It is the day of the ball, and I am waiting for Melanie to finish her last dance rehearsal. The lesson was over an hour ago, but Melanie remains here to continue practicing the steps. Meanwhile, I am preoccupied with thoughts of Rod's curse. I cannot believe that Rod traded his voice for a title, so the reason the king was able to find Ophelia was because of Rod. It is a little difficult to wrap my head around the implications, but one thing bothers me. Rod told me why he has the curse, but he gave no explanation as to how to break it. How did it go in the original fairy tale? And Melanie finishes up the last steps of her routine before walking over to me. I hand her the glass of water I was holding for her. Thank you, Melody. And Melanie must notice my curiosity because she stops to look at me quizzically. Is something the matter? I read a little bit of that fairy tale, but never finished it. Can you tell me the whole story of the Little Mermaid? The Little Mermaid? And Melanie takes a seat on one of the chairs bordering the throne room and gestures for me to take the one opposite her. Telling a fairy tale is always a good way to wind down. Once upon a time there was a mermaid that fell in love with a handsome prince. One day, when she swam to the surface of the ocean to find him, she saw that the prince was celebrating his birthday on the grandest ship in the kingdom. The little mermaid was captivated by the human party and stayed to watch. Then suddenly a violent storm hit, and the prince was thrown from the ship into the ocean. The little mermaid saved the prince and took him safely to shore, but she could not stay long. She eventually had to return to the ocean and leave him on land. This is similar to Viorica's rescue. The little mermaid was so in love with the prince that she went to see a sea witch who offered to trade her a potion that would turn her mermaid's tail into legs. They struck a deal. The mermaid would sacrifice her beautiful voice for legs so that she could live with the prince on land. So in Rod's case, he traded away his voice to become a prince. However, the sea witch gave the little mermaid a warning and said that if she wasn't able to make the prince fall in love with her, there would be consequences. Consequences? Yes, namely, if the prince fell in love and married someone else, the mermaid's heart would break and she would dissolve into sea foam. Okay, good, she told the original story! I cannot help but recoil. My expression must betray my horror because Melanie quickly shakes her head. There is no need to be worried. Rod has said that his curse is different from the fairy tale. And you believe him? And Melanie shrugs helplessly as she puts down her now empty glass of water. The fairy tale curse always twists the original fairy tale, right? Besides, it's not as if Rod traded his voice for legs, and I've never heard of a cursed person that dies because they cannot break their curse. That may be true, but Melanie does not know what Rod traded his voice for. She does not know that he did it to become a prince for Viorica. Rod is already hiding things from her. Is it possible that Rod will die the day Viorica marries Deckmond? Later that day, I find Rod in the dining hall. He appears to be inspecting the seating arrangements for the night's banquet. He glances up briefly to look at me before returning his attention to the place cards with the guests' names on them. What is it? I've been looking for you all morning. I am distracted from what I am about to say when I notice Rod switching the position of two place cards. I frown as I catch the name on one of them. He is moving Viorica's place at the table. Is he trying to make sure she sits far away from him as possible? Surely you have better things to do than stay in here. What happens if you cannot break your curse? Rod's movement stutters before he shakes his head sharply. That is something you do not need to know. I'm going to plead with him. Something aches deep in my chest at Rod's coldness. Please! Rod startles so strongly that he almost drops the place card he's holding. Please tell me. We have been partners for months now. But I've barely... Yes, I know that it is an unusual partnership, and that most of our helping each other has been subtle, but I am only one good deed away from breaking my curse, while you seem to be no closer to breaking your curse than when we started. I will do whatever I can to help you with your curse, Rod. So please let me help you. Silence falls. Moments later, Rod sighs and looks away from me. Some unspeakably sad emotion shines through his eyes. Even if I wanted your help, Melody, there's nothing you can do. Dread settles in the pit of my stomach at Rod's words. Could I be right? Will Rod actually die if he does not manage to break his curse? And Melanie told me the story of the Little Mermaid. She said that the mermaid dies if the prince marries someone else. Rod, when Viorica marries Deckman, will you... My voice trails off when I hear the sound of the door behind us. Is it Ophelia or the king? Rod rushes forward and grabs me before I can glance back at the door. Ow! I become aware of a weight holding me down to the floor. The impact of the ground against my head blurs my vision, making it impossible for me to see what is happening at first. Am I underneath the dining table? I struggle to try and sit up, but the weight pushes down on me again, forcing me to be still. Quiet. Rod, why did he push me underneath the table? I am about to ask him aloud when the sound of footsteps silences me. I cannot help but remember what Sir Mithros was saying about rumors. If Rod and I were seen alone together by the servants, the rumors will no doubt get worse. Why is Rod doing this? But that is all the time that I have for this episode, guys. So if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, subscribe. By subscribing, you're becoming part of a legacy. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!